Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's City to City component as part of Fintech Week London. The City to City component throughout this entire Fintech Week is poised to highlight some of the best developments and key opportunities throughout the world across Fintech. As a global city like London, London attracts people from across the world, and this panel discussion, alongside all the other City to City ones, is meant to do that. So for today's City to City Arab World, I'm here with a great group of panelists. Before we get started, I wanted to hand over the microphone to Raja Al Mazrouei, the Executive Vice President of the Dubai International Financial Center's DIFC Fintech Hive. Raja, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rajal Mazrouei, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the DIFC Fintech Hive, and I'm pleased to be introducing today's City to City panel on the Arab world and showcasing the Arab world to a global audience via this panel today. The Arab world is home to 400 million people with close to 75% mobile phone penetration. With this rate, all of these people will need access to fast, accurate services, including financial services. For those of you who don't know, the DIFC Fintech Hive was launched back in 2017 as part of the DIFC's innovation agenda, which plays a role in contributing to the overall UAE innovation strategy. At Fintech Hive, we bring together established financial institutions, government entities, technology partners, and creative entrepreneurs to help create a cutting-edge technology that meet the changing needs of the regional financial community. We continue to run our flagship acceleration program alongside other programs, and I am proud to say that we've accelerated more than 120 startups since 2017. These startups, together with our partnering financial institutions, have worked on over 75 proof of concepts, launched over 40 products in the regional markets, and collectively raised close to $350 million in funding. Alongside our acceleration program, we continue to develop the female talent in financial services in the region through Accelerate Her program. Here at the Fintech Hive, we recognize the increasing importance of fintech and how it's becoming a key pillar in the future of financial services, and we are not the only ones. I look forward to hearing today's panel on the Arab world. Over to you, Richie, today's moderator for the panel.
Thank you, Raja. And welcome to today's panel, City to City Arab World. And I'm here with various thought leaders across the Arab world to talk about fintech happening in the region today. So I want to quickly introduce the panelists today. The first person is all the way from Saudi Arabia, Nejoud Al Mulaik, the Director of Fintech Saudi. Nejoud, can you quickly elaborate in terms of what Fintech Saudi is?
Thank you, Richie, and I'm happy to be around this session with everyone. So Fintech Saudi is an initiative launched by the Saudi Central Bank in 2018 in partnership with the Capital Markets Authority. The mandate of Fintech Saudi is to develop the landscape of the emerging fintech industry in Saudi Arabia and build the ecosystem where we focus on the regulatory setup and framework and the sandbox and the testing environments. And then we go into the market and funding scene and look at ways how we can encourage the connectivity between the market and the private sector and the investors, as well with the fintechs to start and scale. And the final pillar that we focus on heavily, which is the community engagement and knowledge transfer. So Fintech Saudi is positioned in the heart of the fintech industry in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you so much, Nejoud. Then all the way to Egypt, we have the Egyptian Fintech Association, Noha Shakar, who's the Secretary General. Noha, can you quickly elaborate about what the Egyptian Fintech Association is?
Very much, Richie, for having us, and it's a pleasure to be amongst all the wonderful fintech hubs around the Arab world. Well, the Egyptian Fintech Association, in short, is a non-for-profit that was mainly established 3 years ago to build that nurturing fintech ecosystem that can support financial inclusion efforts that are on the top of the agenda of the Egyptian government. What we do, we mainly work on multiple pillars that supports fintech growth, whether it's policy advocacy and regulatory reform, whether it's capacity building amongst on both sides of the market supply and demand. So we work with the incumbents, whether they're banks, insurance companies, to build the accommodating corporate culture, the innovative corporate culture. We also work on the market itself, creating that awareness for fintech solutions, their impact. We work on education as well. We definitely support the awareness amongst presenting Egypt as a hub for fintech to attract direct foreign investments and investors that would be actually interested in the large opportunity that we have present in here that I'm sure we can elaborate on later on. Thank you, Richie.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And now all the way to Morocco, we have the Casablanca Finance City, which is here today with Manal Bernoussi, who is the Strategy, Partnerships, and Comms Director. Manal, can you quickly elaborate on what the Casablanca Finance City is?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Richie. Very happy to be a part of this great panel. So I'm speaking on behalf of Casablanca Finance City, which is a business and financial hub for Africa. It's a public-private initiative launched by the Moroccan authorities to support international investors by providing a conducive business environment for them to operate in Africa, which might seem a little overwhelming when you don't have boots on the ground. So what we do is we offer access to key contacts and data, administrative support, as well as being part of a larger community that is present in over 48 countries in Africa. And like all international financial centers, we have a strong focus on fintech and innovation, and we work on raising awareness and building capacity.
Excellent, thank you for that. And now traveling all the way to the Gulf Cooperation Council area, we have Bahrain. So Bahrain Fintech Bay, we're here today with Khalid Dannish, who's the CEO. Khalid, can you elaborate a bit about what Bahrain Fintech Bay is for the audience?
Thanks, Richie, and thanks for having me on the panel. Yeah, sure. So we launched in 2018 as a strategic fintech hub, backed by industry, but also closely aligned to our national strategies and government initiatives. So we focus on 4 or 5 key pillars, including incubation, funding, acceleration, education, as well as corporate advisory.
Excellent, thank you. And now nearby, we go to Qatar, the Qatar Financial Center. We have Henk Hoogendoorn, I pronounced your name right, who's the Managing Director for the financial sector. Henk, can you elaborate a bit about what Qatar Financial Center is for everybody?
Yeah, thank you very much, Richie, and good to be on the panel today in the Fintech Week. Yeah, Qatar is obviously on the mind of many people because after the European Championship, the next stop is basically Doha for the World Championships. We are a financial center, we are a government platform, and we are focusing on attracting banks, financial institutions, and fintech. And we work closely together with the Qatar Fintech Hub, which is an umbrella of all the banks. So we are a small but very ambitious country, and we would like to attract international fintech and offer them basically also accelerator incubator programs. But also we create market access. So we help the fintech companies to find customers and possible investors. Obviously, you have to do your own sales pitch if you come to us, but we really take you by the hand and try to make you successful. That's the message to the viewers today.
Thank you for that. And last but not least, we have Suleiman Barada, who's the head of the Union of Arab Banks Digital. Suleiman, can you elaborate on what UAB Digital is?
Sure. Thank you, Richie, for having me, and thank you to Fintech Week London. I'm actually the odd man out in this conversation, so I lead the UAB Digital, which is the ecosystem digital transformation arm at the Union of Arab Banks. The Union of Arab Banks is the representative association of the Arab banking sector in the 20 Arab states. It's an association that existed ever since 1976 with a mandate to develop the sector and across the geography. UAB Digital was established last year in April 2020, and I was given the mandate to leave no financial institution behind as we all transition into the digital economy. That initially included the banks, but really recently and lately, it also includes fintechs. So we're equally serving the objectives of the banks and the fintechs, and we intend not to leave anyone behind as we all make this transition.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So let's dive into the panel now. So I want to, for those tuning in, Many might not know about the current state of fintech happening in the Arab world. The Arab world is so massive, right? It expands from all the way from North Africa to the Gulf Cooperation Council region. So let's start with the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council region. Nejoud, can you give a bit of insight in terms of the current state of fintech in that part of the Arab world?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, being in Saudi Arabia, I would love to just bring that lens to the Saudi landscape in terms of financial technology. So I would say that we're not too far away from all of the global movements when it comes to fintech. So the majority of our fintechs are operating in the payment vertical. So Saudi has more than 60 fintechs on the ground operating. 50% or more are being regulated by the central bank and the capital markets authority through the sandbox or through direct licensing. So Saudi Arabia launched the payment law, which opened the door for a lot of payment providers. Second, of course, reforms in terms of the current regulatory infrastructure landscape, where we've seen the crowdfunding, the crowd lending, and the robo-advisors, social trading under capital markets authority supervision. We've seen the saving platforms, InsurTech, buy now, pay later. So the market is fruitful in Saudi. So and therefore there's a lot of progress in terms of adoption, fintech adoption in our market. I would say that 3 out of 4 part of our national survey use one or two solutions in the fintech industry. So Saudi is picking up, of course, in a lot of other verticals. There's definitely the central bank experiment on the CBDC with the UAE. And on the investment side of all of that, I think Saudi has progressed as one of the regions leading in investment rounds or deals in the past 2 years, where we have seen more than 25 investment rounds worth of $400 million. So that's happening in the Saudi scene, and we're picking up in terms of regulatory reforms, in terms of number of fintechs in the market, in terms of verticals that they're operating in, and of course in terms of the adoption rate of the fintech solution.
Thank you for that. And now we cross the causeway and head to Bahrain. So Bahrain, how has it been in terms of, is it similar, because to Saudi? Because you guys have been very active, with financial services in the past and present, and obviously with fintech.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to set the scene, like other fintech hubs around the world, including London, the reason Bahrain has become a fintech hub is because we were traditionally a financial services center. So, that, in addition to all of the initiatives undertaken by the private sector and the national strategy and so on, it's really seen as a key diversifier for us, away from, of course, oil. So fintech's still relatively nascent in the region, of course, a lot more so 4 to 5 years ago. And, there's been a concerted kind of drive, as I said, from both government and private sector to ensure this ecosystem grows. So specifically in Bahrain, I think a lot of work's been done in the background in terms of the core infrastructure, the data centers, or even on the regulation from a regulatory standpoint. New regulation, new licenses to encourage fintechs to come and try, test it, and launch their solutions. As a regulator in Bahrain, the country launched one of the first regulatory sandboxes in the region. So that's really picked up in pace and opened the doors to a whole host of companies from around the world. So, obviously we're a relatively small market compared to our neighbors, and we try to differentiate ourselves in terms of go-to-market and speed in which we can do so, or fintechs can do so. So now we're home to over 100 fintechs in Bahrain, which is for the size of the island, obviously quite large per capita. We've licensed the first, crypto exchange in the region, the first Sharia compliant crypto exchange. And of course, there was a big push in 2019 towards open banking, which in itself, opens up a whole host of a whole array of innovation on that front. So it's been ticking along. I think the pandemic has definitely accelerated some of those processes, particularly from a psychological standpoint. More adoption. Funding is now starting to flow, and capital starting to flow into these fintechs that are now capitalizing on opportunities across the region. So it's very interesting time to look at this part of the world for sure.
So now we swim across the waters and head over to Henk in Qatar. So Henk, similar trend?
Yeah,
Different?
absolutely similar trends. So we are also a relatively small country, but again with a lot of ambition. So for the people in the UK, if you set up with us, at least you know you have UK common law as a standard. You don't necessarily need to partner with a local company, whatever. So you can really come here and start developing your business. So it's an easy place to do business. I would say our fintech community is already quite active. The payment space is already crowded. We have as an ambition a World Cup cashless. So there are many wallet providers, etc. already. So that space, I would say, is not necessarily a lot of chances. But anything else like InsurTech, we have the largest insurance companies in the GCC. Anything around, I would say, money laundering protection, wealth tech, robo advisory was mentioned in Saudi as well. I think those areas are definitely new, and you will bring something to the table which is new and not yet developed. So those are the fintech companies that we would like to welcome. We would like to be honest. If you already bring something that, and there are already 20, 40 companies, it doesn't make sense. But if you bring something new, we will make sure that you get the customers and get introduced to investors as well. What I think could happen in the GCC is more cooperation. We all have our issues with the regulator. One regulator is a bit further ahead than the other. They're all in the sandbox stage. Open banking is on our wish list. Yeah, so I think at GCC we should be able to work together in the next few years more to open up for each other's fintech companies.
Excellent. So Suleiman, you were saying you don't have a home, but I'm going to put you in the Levant region. So can you elaborate about what's happening there in that sphere? So the likes, because you're based in Beirut, so that's why I'm calling you Lebanon. But in the wider kind of that.
Elaborate further on. Yeah, to elaborate further on the I don't have a home part of the statement, so that people don't misinterpret that. So the union geography is across the Arab states. It's across the entire Arab region. But the General Secretariat of the Union of Arab Banks happens to be located in Beirut, and this is where I operate from. Now, being physically closer to the Levant area, and that includes, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. There's a huge difference between the dynamics of these four countries, and each country has its own geopolitical / socioeconomic situations that they deal with. But let me start with Lebanon. It's been really progressing in the past few years until we started to get hits from the overall security and political situation. So I must say, currently the ecosystem is stagnant. With some exceptions on the fintech export, I must say. So the country has moved from doing organic growth of the fintech ecosystem to actually exporting fintech brain power to the surrounding countries and maybe to the world. So that's the current dynamics within Lebanon. Definitely, there has been some initiatives by the Banque du Liban, the central bank in Lebanon in the past, but that also did not, it was not sustainable. And on the private sector side of things, and apart from the government initiatives, there has been, and there is actually a couple of ecosystem network type of operators that are still trying to break through. But again, I think even these operators are now, and hubs are now more focused on exporting brain power to the world. Moving on to Jordan. In Jordan, the situation has been, consistently growing, maybe slowly but surely, I must say. And we see with the sandbox in Jordan, a determination within the local ecosystem led by the Central Bank of Jordan and the Fintech Bay as well, being present physically on the ground in Jordan. That is making and reinforcing the fintech positioning within the country. We are already in conversations with the Jordanian authorities as to how the sandbox can be now can bring more fruition into the ecosystem, and we're having conversations around open banking and CBDC and large initiatives of that sort. Iraq is more at very early stages, so it falls within the laggards category, but that too is a motivation for us at the union. And again, as I mentioned, our role and my mandate is to leaving no financial institution behind. So we are accelerating conversations within the Iraqi ecosystem to try and leapfrog them into where everybody else is in the region. And we see the common denominator, Richie, is that even those countries who are still in the laggards category or maybe late adopters, they do have enough determination to move on and to make the right progress. So maybe in the next year or two, we will see a lot of acceleration, and that might change the overall concentration of fintech progress in the region. On the Syria side of things, that's still very highly restricted. So yeah.
Yeah, we figured. so yeah, thank you so much for that. That's very insightful. So now we head to North Africa, the North African region, which is unique because it's also both the Arab world and also Africa. So I want to bring it to Morocco. So Manal, do you want to elaborate as well from your kind of point of view?
Sure. As a first comment, I would say that North Africa is often overlooked in comparison to GCC or other African markets like Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya. However, North African tech scene has grown rapidly over the last years as one of Africa's most promising startup markets, with regional champions like Egypt, of course, Tunisia, and Morocco also. The region really has great potential. It benefits from a unique location, as you said, and is gradually building its track record in attracting more attention from international investors, tech giants, incubators, accelerators, and media coverage as well. So fintech-wise, we notice a lot of solutions to help with the financial inclusion of the African population. Solutions such as mobile wallets, eKYC, and more solutions that incorporate machine learning and artificial intelligence. For sure, the coronavirus crisis has been very challenging for many industries, and without compensating for the human and economic toll, of course, as Khalid said, there has been silver linings as well. I mean, in Morocco, in the last 15 months of COVID, we achieved more than in the previous 15 years. There has been undeniable acceleration of the digital transformation for both incumbent companies and startups, and we witnessed a boom in the industry. Now at Casablanca Finance City, we play our role. So we have launched a regional innovation lab to foster the fintech ecosystem. And we act as a catalyzer for that ecosystem. And our central bank, Bank Al Maghrib, has been very present in this trend as well. They did not choose to implement a sandbox, unlike other benchmarks. Rather, they put in place a dedicated team and created a sort of one-stop shop to meet with the fintechs and listen to their needs and decide on the best ways to move forward, which is a great way to keep close from what's happening in the fintech industry while still protecting the consumer and adapting along the way. So bottom line, I would say there is a solid momentum in the region, and we are really optimistic on the outlook for fintech development in Morocco and more broadly in the region.
Thank you for that. And now we walk finally to Egypt. So Noha, do you want to add to this as well? Because I know you have a lot to say about this topic.
Well, before I talk about Egypt, I'm really glad and happy that all those initiatives and activities that are happening in other hubs in the Arab world. I mean, we're in a collaborative scene, and this is absolutely music to my ears. In Egypt, actually, over the past 5 to 6 years, the fintech scene has been exceptionally active. It's been growing at an exceptional pace compared to other markets. If we look at some of the highlights that we should look at, those would include the regulatory reform, which has been a true driving force to the growth of the number of fintechs within the market, the emergence of partnerships between incumbents, whether they're banks or insurance companies, with fintechs and insurtechs, and of course has also reflected on the number of investment deals that has actually taken place in the country, even through COVID. I mean, although the number of investment deals that has happened during the past year was actually less than the year before due to COVID, in Egypt, it has actually increased by 50%. So the year before COVID, we had around 33 deals. Last year, they were around 50. So, and that was even against the trend that is there. That reflects the how promising and attractive the market is to investors, especially that 80% of those investments actually came from foreign investors. They were not local ones. So if we look at the growth and the increase in the use cases that are even adopted by fintechs. I mean, until last year, the majority of the fintechs operated in the country were in the payment scene. Last year, we saw the very first insurtech, Bringy, and they actually partnered with an international insurance company, AXA, to bring the services to the underserved segment. We saw optimization, spending optimization startups. We saw investment startups. Savings were there, especially in the Rosca model for a few years. Emerging new use cases, digital investment and digital lending as well. That hasn't grown up to expectations, but with the new law that the central bank has just launched that enables open banking as an infrastructure to support the growth of multiple fintech use cases, we see a lot of development happening within the foreseeable future. On the regulatory reform, aside from the regulators that were launched and actually being also under review and by the government, you have one that was launched, issued by the central bank, and that's the fintech law. There's another one that covers other non-banking financial services by the FRA that is currently in the parliament being discussed and is going to be issued soon, that enables even forms of alternative finance like equity crowdfunding, for an example. You also see laws and regulations that support and improves the climate of doing business in general. So you find an SME law that was mainly issued to support that segment within the society, consumer protection law that was there and up and running, initiatives by the government to encourage investors to actually come in here and establish their businesses, like a single window initiative where you can do everything either digitally, online, or you just go to a relationship manager in one of the centers that are out there to do that. So yes, exciting changes, exciting news. Banks are now partnering with fintechs. A large government-owned bank, Bank Mas, has just partnered with one of the fintechs, Paynas, for example. We've mentioned bringing on the partnership with AXA, and that's one of the trends that are really, really exciting, because that reflects not just the increase in maturity and weight of the fintechs and insurtechs that are being actually produced by the ecosystem in here, but also the shift and the change and the corporate culture and the mindset amongst the incumbents, especially the big ones. So those are really, really promising trends. And it's Egypt's second largest market, 103 million Egyptians who are at best underserved when it comes to financial services. 40% of the population are mainly within that youth segment. Huge opportunity for everybody, for companies that wishes to expand and grow into a market that can sustain as grow, as well as, of course, for investors who wish to channel money to an emerging market, returns that cannot be matched into any other market. So yes, very promising future. Thank you, Richie.
Thank you for that. Thanks for that. So now I want to ask you guys, I'm going to throw it on the floor, is, obviously, for those tuning in, there are challenges everywhere in the world. And I think the Arab world has its own, challenges in terms of fintech. And what would you say in the region is kind of the biggest one, and how has that kind of been converted into an opportunity? So I'm going to throw it to Henk. Henk, what would you say? Because I know you mentioned.
Yeah, I think if you don't know the Middle East, then I would advise you to come and visit some of the countries that are appearing in this panel. Just get a feel for it, because it's a different culture, but we have in general a tech-savvy population. People would like to innovate, would like to work together. I think in all countries in GCC and North Africa as well, there is a partnership model. Government and companies like to work with innovation partners. So it's a welcoming culture. The best thing is to come over and experience it. What we do in Qatar, of course, is to partner and help people and bring the right people that are necessary in the country and the right technology. So I would advise you, pick up the phone, talk to any one of us on the panel, and find out whether this is the place for you to start in the GCC. You have to start somewhere, and from there you can conquer into the big Arab world. And yes, given the population, there are many opportunities. And just find a home to start, and it could be Qatar.
Speaking of home, Suleiman, so what has been the challenge of fintech in your kind of, because a bunch of you had different themes, and I think Henk, you were kind of elaborating on converting it into an opportunity. But in terms of would you say would be in the Arab world as a whole, like kind of a challenge that you think and then convert it to an opportunity?
Sure. I think the main challenge that have been hindering progress, and I'm not talking about a particular region, I'm going to be talking about the common challenges that are being faced by each and every country in the region, is agility, is the absent agility, both within the incumbents space, and I'm representing incumbents here, and also within the regulatory space. And that agility is being extended by the new blood that's coming through the fintechs and the entrepreneurial brain power into this whole economy, right? So I would say mainly to overcome the problem of agility is to develop, capabilities, is to build capabilities, build capacities that can help regulators get over the fears, get over the unknowns, get over the uncertainty, and make the right progress. And also for incumbents to start, moving away from celebrating the legacies to celebrating what the future can look like if they open up and work hand in hand with the other actors within the ecosystem. So I think that was a major lacking, and we're all working in our capacities to ensure that these lackings are addressed in whichever way possible.
Thanks. So Manal, I think I saw you nod your head. Do you agree with that? Do you want to add to that of topic?
Absolutely. I totally echo what has been said. Regulatory reasons might be one of the biggest challenges. We see mainly fintechs operating in the B2B space or B2B2C. They often will need to team up with banking institutions to comply with regulations. So we still need to work on a startup friendly regulatory environment. So that would be a big one. And maybe a second one, scarcity of investment vehicles and the funding, especially during the Death Valley phases, is another big one between early stage and late financing. However, we do notice at Casablanca Finance City a growing number of funds being launched to address address the markets. And yeah, so I would keep those two.
Excellent. And Nejoud, you were speaking earlier about regulation and the many changes happening in Saudi. Can you just, do you agree with everything? Do you have anything else you want to add?
Of course, I definitely agree with all of the perspectives and point of views. I just want to add right now, we all used to say financial inclusion. Now we're going to say digital inclusion. Digital inclusion is on the top of the government objectives in Saudi Arabia. We've seen the digital identity. We've seen all of digital passport and the fintechs come and work hand in hand in supporting all of that. The challenge is, of course, always how we can ensure there's a protection of the data. How is the cybersecurity landscape in our region is being established. I'll go back to the National Adoption Survey. 86% of the participants said that they only want to share their data, a financial transaction, with regulated entities. So definitely people are looking for protection and consumer protection and from regulators, of course. So in Saudi Arabia with open banking right now roadmap, and we're looking at open finance, digital inclusion, all of these are coming together between challenges and opportunities, and I think we are well positioned in Saudi Arabia to turn these challenges to opportunities. And of course, I just found all of the points from the panelists, and we all agree that there are challenges, but these are definitely going to be opportunities.
Excellent. And then I'm going to quickly cross the bridge. So Khalid, I'm looking at you. Do you have anything you want to add to this as well in terms of what everybody said so far?
Well, not to repeat what everyone else has said, but obviously the common thread is regulation. And the reason I think we're all saying this is because when you look at the Arab market in totality, that's when it becomes, or the Arab world market in totality with North Africa, the GCC, the Levant region, that's where it becomes very interesting, especially with solutions that have a use case that can be adopted across these markets. So when we're talking about regulation, I think the biggest challenge is, of course, the concept of passporting, or the concept of harmonization of regulation between various authorities or monetary authorities, regulators. I think what's happened is because we've started at such a later stage, we've been able to collectively, not at the same pace, of course, and different countries are focused on different pieces of policy and so on. But we've been able to leapfrog a lot of the hurdles that we're seeing in more mature markets. And open banking is a good example of that. You can see how quickly it's being looked at, it's being adopted, and it's being executed on when it comes to the Arab world. But again, going back to regulation, what it has enabled us to do is to make, or our regulators to make, quick decisions in how they go about their policy makings. As I mentioned earlier, typically it's aligned to national strategies. The regulators are quite bullish as well on certain technologies and innovations and use cases, especially if it's to kickstart incumbents or to kickstart economies and so on. So definitely, I can speak for Bahrain, that the fact that we started at such a late stage and the lack of harmonization has meant that we've attracted companies from all over the world to Bahrain specifically for our regulatory licenses. Crypto is a great example, but there are many others that we're looking at or that have been implemented: crowdfunding, web advisory, and so on. And I think the second challenge, I think, as was mentioned earlier by Manal, was funding. So specifically, I think I've seen in the GCC the earlier stage funding was lacking. And around, again, since the pandemic, things kind of were on hold. So all that pent up kind of energy and opportunities have now kind of come to fruition. So we're starting to see a lot of volume of very high ticket sized deals come through in fintech, whether it be in Egypt and Saudi, even in Bahrain, relatively to what we had previously. And even now more so, we're seeing founders look to even venture debt, right? Because with more deals, they're looking at less dilution. So investment was definitely a challenge, but now that that the kind of taps are open and we're attracting a lot of investment from all over the world, I think founders are getting a better deal essentially, and definitely looking to scale and to leverage all of our bridges across the Arab world. So there's upside to it, definitely.
Excellent. And Noha, because you were nodding your head throughout. I mean, I want to ask you a unique question for you, because you've highlighted a few things and everybody's kind of saying similar things. Do you actually think the Arab world can be a leader in fintech on a global stage, and why? As we start ending this panel discussion. So Noha, off to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Richie, for the question. A yes or a no? It definitely is a yes. I mean, objectively speaking, it's not just because I'm an Arab and I'm truly proud with all the efforts that were actually taken by the ecosystems in general, not just the governments and within the Arab world. It's because we have all what it takes to actually make a successful fintech ecosystem that can provide a reliable a pipeline of fintechs that offer solutions that are not just suitable for the Arab world or Africa, but similar markets around the world. I mean, there are solutions right now that are offered by fintechs that I see them fitting perfectly in South America, for example, in some countries in Eastern Europe. So yes, we do have all what it takes to make a successful fintech hub. Whether it's the size of the market, if you look at the Arab world combined, you have purchasing power that are absolutely unparalleled, even by the largest economies in the world. If you look at the size of investment and the availability across all the stages of growth for fintechs, we have those documented in numbers. We can look at it. The education around the Arab world, I mean, even the countries, it's like we used to face issues with the quality of education in Egypt, but never doctors and engineers. So we've always produced the best doctors and wonderful engineers. You have like 500,000 engineers graduating every year. 60% are ladies, which is something that is definitely a source of pride. The majority of the Arab world are young, which is wonderful. The purchasing power is soon going to be shifted to the generation that is tech savvy naturally. So it's no longer our parents, it's now the generation that uses mobile to do everything and anything. The prohibitions of like, no, I have to go see an employee, sit in a branch to actually get a financial services is no longer there. And of course, the support of the governments, the regulations that are happening and changing, the technology infrastructure that is, and also the digital readiness, whether it's amongst nations and countries themselves. It's like, look at Saudi, they were one of the very few to put together that digital identity initiative. And right now here in Egypt, like the digital infrastructure for the government was a challenge. Now the central bank is working on that digital identity thing over a blockchain, a platform, and that's absolutely wonderful. The readiness of the incumbents, however, may represent a challenge that we need banks and insurance companies to actually start tackling, because it takes an average of 3 years if you are a really, really efficient bank or insurance company to change and update that technology infrastructure. So the answer is yes, we do have all it takes. And again, we have wonderful teams that are working on making that a reality. Thank you.
Excellent. And due to the sake of time, I just want to end it. So thank you for that kind of ending that, Noha. And just quickly across here, just 15 seconds, just quick final thought about your country. Go, Henk.
Yeah, so we're also latecomer, but the advantage is that you can go up quickly. We have the money, we have the customers for fintech, and come here with your right technology and we will help you.
Thank you. Khalid.
So thanks. It's still a relatively untapped market, very dynamic, and we're maturing, every week. So there's tremendous upside and growth opportunities here. So whether you're looking to deploy capital, launch a new solution for the Middle East, or export your solution here, we think we're the right place to bring it all together.
Thank you. Nejoud.
Well, a lot of opportunities in the Saudi market, of course. Our plans and objective is to become a fintech nation. So I think there are a lot of room for international players to come as well and partner in our markets.
Thank you. Suleiman.
Well, for the region that you chose, I represent, I would say, despite the adversities and the challenges that everyone is facing in this part of the world, I think that adversity is going to, combined with the stubbornness of the entrepreneurs working in this area, is going to lead to very brilliant outcomes. So I'm a strong believer of the innovations that's going to come out of this part of the world, and I would really love to see the entire region thriving altogether into a leader on the global map.
Thank you. Manal.
Well, to keep it short, I would say if you're an international investor, 3 good reasons. One, as a stable and reliable platform to access the African market, which is 1.2 billion people. 2, a highly educated and tech-savvy and young population. 3, a strong connectivity to European, African, and the Arab world. And last but not least, the food is delicious. So keep an eye on Morocco.
All your foods are delicious. So the Moroccan food is very good. Thank you. Noha, 15 seconds to end it.
I would second the delicious Moroccan food before I actually comment on that. Or absolutely wonderful. Well, we have a huge market. We're collaborative. We are open to international investors. You have a huge funding gap in the market, financial inclusion rates of 10% for banking solutions, around 3% for insurance solutions of all kind. And now we have a regulatory environment that is supportive and encouraging. It's the best time to actually consider operating out of Egypt.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the thought leaders of the Arabs here, and Henk and myself, because we're not Arab, obviously. Thank you again to Raja for the intro. Thank you again, panelists, and thank you for the support you've given Fintech Week London. I know all your organizations have been one of our partners, so we thank you again for your support. And enjoy the rest of the City to City series happening later this week and the rest of Fintech Week London. Thank you guys so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the week.